Back to class 3, tech entrepreneurship. Let's dive right into it. Tomorrow we're going to have a makeup class for Tuesday. It will be at 8 a.m., same time, same channel. I look forward to seeing you guys. Look forward to having you guys here. All right, so I get a little perturbed every once in a while when I hear people use the word strategy and tactics interchangeably. Strategy and tactics are not the same thing. So for instance, this last fall, I was watching a football game on TV, and the announcer says to the other announcer, "Hey, Bob, it's 3rd and goal here. What's the strategy that you would have to score a touchdown?" And the strategy is to win the game, and how you're going to win it with the players and the whole dynamics and all that. What he meant was tactics. What would you do? Tactic is the actual execution of your strategy, right? So what is the tactic that you would use? Now, I might be splitting hairs here right now, but I wanted you to remember this in particular because when you are building your business, when you're building your startup, you should know the difference between strategy and tactics. So I'm by no means a warmonger, but the reality of it is that business is battle every day. Business is war every day. It's constantly flanking your competitors, trying to get a leg up on them, whether it be through R&D, whether it be through distribution, whether it be through exclusivity agreements, whatever it may be. So I've got a little way that I remember the difference between strategy and tactics, and this, of course, will be on the quiz. So today's class is about positioning. And we'll get into this in a second, but I've been thinking about this for a while, and I've decided to go ahead and give you the definition of strategy. Strategy, the analogy is win the war. All right? What is your war? What is your war? So yesterday I happened to listen to Tim Cook, the CEO of Apple Computers. I happened to listen to Tim Cook, and he basically said they were talking about Samsung and Apple. And he made a very, very important point. And he basically said, we don't want to be all things to all people. We aren't trying to have the most. We're not trying to sell the most number of iPhones, or we'll just cell phones. He's looking at the quality. His cell phones, although might be applicable for everyone, he knows that they're not. Whereas maybe Samsung is trying to be all things to all people, and they're looking at a volume game. Well, the reality of it is Apple is in a red ocean battle with Samsung. And we've talked about the difference between red ocean and blue ocean, correct? And just out of curiosity, the individuals online, I will be going over the red ocean and blue ocean here today. All right, so strategy is win the war. Strategy is win the war. Tactics is take the hill. And again, this is how I remember. Planning is the path to take the hill. And then execution is just do it. Now, here's my famous triangular shape. I must have been a geometry teacher in my other life. if you think about it, you can layer it. Your strategy is going to be up here, your tactics, and this is an organization. Your tactics, your planning, and then at some point, you've got, whoops, almost wrote soldiers. You've got execution. Somebody actually has to do it. That's your front line, right? That's your front line. I really cannot hit home how important it is for you to discriminate between tactics and strategy. It's critically important because strategy sets the war. What war is it that you're going to be battling into? What is that long-term goal? You're going to pick a point, and maybe it's not just one point, maybe it's several points. You're going to pick a point, and you're going to march to it. That's strategy. That's how you win a war. You've got to pick a point. Otherwise, you're like a leaf in the wind. You don't know exactly where you're going. Okay, the tactic is going to be, okay, I picked this point. Now, how do I get there? Et cetera, et cetera. So this STPE, I really want to see if you can employ that with your own startup or with the company that you're even working with now. Everybody always wants to be up here at the stratosphere, right? At the strategy level, where you make decisions and everybody extols your wisdom to the gods, and you bring home a few $1 million a year, right? That's where everybody ultimately tries to get to. But often we start at the ground level, at the floor, right? We are the front line. And then we move our way upward. All right. Now, we are competing every day in two types of oceans. We are competing every day in two types of oceans. And I may have mentioned the terms blue ocean and red ocean. Have I mentioned the word blue ocean at all yet? No? Well, this is the perfect class. We are looking at a war, a battle with your business. And a lot of startups go into battle thinking that they have to be battling Coca-Cola, Disney, Samsung. I mean, they go in, they think, wow, how can I compete with these legacy competitors, these companies that have huge brand names? How do I compete with them? And they try to compete with them. They try to compete with them with better products, but yet then they price themselves at the same price point or lower than, say, a IBM or a Samsung or whatever it may be. And the reality of it is, in this world, especially as a startup, you need to consciously move yourself into the blue ocean versus the red ocean. This is critical. This is absolutely critical that you understand this, because in the red ocean is characterized as blood in the water. It's blood in the water. It's the biggest sharks. It's the biggest companies, and they want you to compete on their turf. They are big fish in a big ocean. They want you in their waters because that's how they gobble you up. That's how you lose. That's how you go out of business. The red ocean is characterized as the mass market, mainstream, standardization, efficiency, and we're going to call this efficiency burn. And in the red ocean, they have two things. Maybe somebody online can help me out, or Phil, maybe you can take a guess. And I haven't told you the answer, so I'm really just asking you to think about this intuitively. What are the two primary resources that large companies have that startups don't? Give me one.
Employees.
Employees, money. Ben says money and people. And Phil, you said what?
Employees.
Employees. You're all absolutely right. They have resources. And they have money and exactly people. Ben, did you take a look at my notes before, or what? You hit it right on the head. They have employees, as Ben said, as Artemis said, money. You don't have the luxury of a gigantic budget where you can just spend money on advertising, on marketing freely. I mean, think of Coca-Cola. I don't even know if Coca-Cola knows how much they spend and where they spend it. They spend money everywhere. Everywhere. They have money and they have people. Those are two resources and luxuries that you don't have. So how do you compete with a company who has these two resources? And not only that, they're efficient. They are efficient, meaning that, let's take a dive into what efficiency is. Efficiency typically boils down to processes. Processes boils down to being able to produce a widget in such a way that there is very little wasted time, very little wasted energy, very little wasted resources, raw materials, which brings their cost down significantly. And we know that it's not what you sell it for where you make money. We know it's what you make it for. How in the heck is a startup company supposed to compete with a red ocean shark that has no money, that has maybe one person or two people out of their house or garage, and certainly aren't efficient? Innovation. They are the matrix, okay? Niche. That's exactly right, Randy. Exactly right. The blue ocean is characterized as the niche. That's absolutely correct. It's the niche market. It's intimacy burn. Let me grab another pen here, sorry. Instead of efficiency burn, it's intimacy burn. It's all about customization. And customization, as Ben states, is really innovation, right? We all pay more. We all pay more for customized products and services. Somebody online tell me what you pay more for, what you're willing to pay more for. Maybe it's shoes, maybe it's pens, maybe it's technology, maybe it's clothing, maybe whatever it is, there is something that we are all willing to pay more for. Maybe it's a watch, maybe it's a car. Shoes. Artemis is willing to pay more for shoes. You know, the more you're willing to pay, the more customized that product should be. It should give you that intimate feeling. Okay, it should give you that. It should give you that. Should give you a feeling of almost guilt and delight at the same time. Do you follow me? When you know you're having to pay more for a product or a service, you should feel guilty and you should feel delighted at the same time. This is not the mass market. You may be making a product similar to what, say, Microsoft or Quicken or whoever it is, whatever it is, you may be making a similar product. And what I see happen all too often is I see individuals go out and they create a better product, a better platform, and this happens more in technology than anywhere that I've ever seen versus low-tech manufacturing, etc. They go out and they say, well, Microsoft's product sells for $189. Mine is better, my software is better, I've added this, I've added that, whatever the competitive advantages are that you have added to your product. And then you go out and you price it at $189 or $200. And you say to yourself, well, that seems to be what the market will bear. That seems to be, everybody buys that product at that price. And yet they'll go to Grimaldi's and pay more for pizza than you would at Domino's. The lessons are right in front of us. You cannot price your product where the red ocean is pricing your product because that's where they want you to be. Now they have the money and the resources to put you out of business. And think of how much it costs for Microsoft to actually create that product. Total cost of ownership. Not very much compared to you and your startup. Your costs are going to be significantly higher. There's not that efficiency there. You don't have those economies of scale. And we'll go over what economies of scale are as class goes on. Let me give you an example. So last fall, what's the smaller iPad called? The iPad that they came out with? The Mini. So there are lots of iPads out there. Lots of tablets. Small tablets out there. You have Google, you have Microsoft, you have Kindle, you have all of these tablets that are out there. And they're all priced at what price range? Where are they all priced at? I'm not talking about the Mini. I'm talking about the tablets like, say, the Kindle Fire or whatever. They're all right there at around $220. Am I right? Somewhere right in there. I might be off by $5 or $10 or $20. But they're all right in there around $220, we'll say. And, think about it. You have Kindle. You have, I think Google has one. Microsoft has one. There's a few others. What other ones are there? There's like 5 or 6. I think Samsung has one, etc. And they're all in the same price range. And Microsoft's in the premium. Okay. And so they go out there and they say, well, it looks like Kindle's at $220 and they're doing really well. We we need to put out our own product, and we're going to have to compete with Kindle. Samsung is saying the same thing, so are some of these other companies. And they price it they're all at that $220 price range. And then Apple comes in with the Mini. Where's Apple's tablet at? Where is the Mini priced at? Isn't it somewhere around $329? It's considerably higher. And it doesn't have that many more bells and whistles from what I understand. It is possibly a better product, but what are you paying for? You're paying for a little more customization in that it looks pretty cool. You're not paying for a huge advance in technology. And Apple wasn't about, even though they're in the red ocean, you see this? The Mini is priced at $329. They could have jumped right into the red ocean and said, you know what? We need to compete for market share. We've got money. We've got people. We're going to put our product right there at $220, $230, whatever it may be, $210, and we're going to try to get market share. We're going to try to get as many sales as possible. And Apple said, no, no, no. We want people to recognize that we are still a niche type company. That we haven't lost our roots. We want people to recognize that our product is better. And what's that old saying? It might be a myth in some cases, but what's that old saying? You get what you pay for. Or you value what you pay for, right? So the iPod Mini came out into the market, and they've done really, really well at $329. How much money? I mean, you're talking $109 that some of these other products have left off the table. Left on the table, I'm sorry. They've left it on the table. And now, can they go up in price? It's going to be very difficult without adding huge amounts of technology to get to a 300 plus price point. Apple is basically, from a marketing perspective, said we are going to create our own blue ocean, even though this is a red ocean product. We are going to stay in our own blue ocean. We're going to create it, and we're going to try to keep in here as long as possible. That's exactly right, Artemis. They would have to create a whole new version to bump up their price point. And now the Mini has taken a significant market share at a much higher price point. And they're making more money. All because they have made a conscious decision to not compete in the red ocean, even though they are a red ocean competitor. They are finding blue ponds. People ask, I read articles all day long about how Apple is, why are they successful, what makes them tick, etc. Sure, the prices drop. But it's innovation, right? It's innovation that drives them. I was watching TV yesterday, and it's been 200 days, or 230 days, or 40 days since Apple has come up with their next product. People expect innovation out of Apple, it seems, every 90 days. They love that about Apple. Because Apple creates their own blue ponds, their own blue oceans. I cannot tell you how important it is for you, going back to this page, I cannot tell you how important it is that when you create your product or your service, that you not only recognize that you're in a blue pond that might be competing with red ocean individuals or companies, but that you add premium pricing. I've heard so many software, so many tech companies say, well, yeah, but this is what such and such charges per seat, per, application, per whatever. So what? Who cares what they charge? That's exactly what they want you to think. That's exactly the way they want you to think, because then you're going to jump into their red ocean, and it's not going to be long before you're upside down and then out the door and then going to go work for them. That's the reality of it. That's the reality of it. Have any of you experienced or heard of any startups that have done this? I know I'm not the only one. This is why I talk to you about the blue ocean and the red ocean. This is why I talk to you about the two. You need to make the distinction, and you need to make sure that you're niche oriented. So the question that I have is, can you make money as a niche product? I mean, not a little bit of money. I mean, can you do billions in revenue as a niche product? Can you do hundreds of millions in revenue as a niche product? Absolutely. Absolutely. Think of Apple, and again, Apple is just the easiest company to use. If somebody has anything else, let me know. But 11% of all computers are Macs. That's such a small percentage. That's a niche product. It's billions of dollars of revenue a year. That's why they have so much cash. Think about it. They operate like they are still, believe it or not, Apple operates like they are still out of their garage. Have you noticed that Apple does not spend one dime? In fact, you will not even find them on the internet advertising at all anywhere. They don't do any banner ads. They don't do any Google ads. They don't do anything. They don't do any of that online advertising. You can't find them. You can't find them doing an ad on the azcentral.com. You're not going to find a banner pop up that says Apple Computers. They're on TV. That's right. They spend money on commercials. I haven't seen an Apple commercial in a while. You know why I say they operate like they're out of their garage? Because in the blue ocean, Steve Jobs, a long time ago, figured out that if you can get the media to work for you, you don't have to spend the money on media. I don't know what service you subscribe to in terms of getting your news online, whether it be Yahoo or Google or CNN or whatever it may be. But there's not a day that goes by that there are not dozens of new articles written about Apple. That's called PR. The blue ocean, you get PR. In the red ocean, they have money to spend on ads. It's earned media. It's PR. How much? Think of it like this. This is what's amazing. How many times have is Apple going to lose their next generation iPhone at a bar where there happen to be tech journalists sitting around? And the next thing you know, they're speculating as to whether or not there's going to be a hologram that comes out of the next iPhone or what the technology is, and then they're writing about it. And it just so happens that within the next 3 months of launch that they lose their next generation iPhone at some random place. It happens every single time. Uh-oh, it leaked out. You know what it is? It's somebody in marketing saying, hey, send Joe and Jane over to the Silicon Valley, bar where all the tech journalists hang out, and leave the next generation phone, but don't put everything into it, but leave the next generation, just whet their appetite a little bit, and then bam, what happens? There's an explosion of PR. As Artemis says, it creates buzz. How much more effective is that than Apple buying an ad themselves? Huge! It's huge! It goes around the world in a second. They operate like they are still out of their garage, again, which is why they have so much money. This is how you need to operate. This is how you need to get PR. You need to think of ways that you can actually generate interest in your product without spending money. Because you don't have the money to compete with Apple, with Toyota, with Disney, with whoever. You don't have that money. You need to compete the way Apple competes. Even though they have money, they operate like they're still out of their garage. This is the distinction between the blue ocean and the red ocean. People always pay more. You need to be charging premium prices for your product. You need to be getting PR as often as possible. That means picking up the phone and dialing journalists. That means emailing bloggers. That means getting into the stream online with individuals that will write about your product, will test your product. I am going to, because this happened this morning. I have a student, Jeremy Goldberg, and he emailed me this morning, and he said that he had created a new app. And I am going to, just because he emailed me, I am going to email everybody his app. And he said, if you like it, Aram, please send it out. And it's a restaurant deal finder. He got it. He gets it. He knows I know a lot of people. And he knows if I like it, I am going to send it. And I'm going to email everybody his app just because he has shown me that he can operate in the blue ocean. And I'm sure the product is good. He's been working on it for a while. But that's earned media. That's PR. Don't leave money on the table. Apple didn't. They're pricing their Mini at $329. Everybody else is at $220. And now when they want to move up, as Artemis said, they are definitely going to have to create some new technologies. They're definitely going to have to add some value. Now, that's part of positioning. And that's a general sense of the word. How many of you have heard about positioning as it relates to marketing? Totally different concept. How many of you have heard about positioning as it relates to marketing? Well, this is what positioning is really all about. You can position yourself, number one, in the blue ocean. That's the first thing you do as a startup. That's your general positioning definition. Instead of going into the red ocean that I see 95% of the businesses do. And then there's positioning and marketing, and this is my favorite. This is my favorite type of positioning. I love talking to you guys about this. We've got the marketing equation here. The marketing equation is P equals S, P equals S plus D plus E. Now I have added E. Again, you guys get real life, real time business experience from me. So I have added E. What are we solving for here? This is a general question. What are we solving for here? Somebody tell me what we're solving for. What letter? Exactly. We're starting for P. It's not price, it's not product. We're not talking about the 4 Ps. There you go, Dave. There you go, Dave. Positioning equals segmentation plus differentiation plus the experience. I should kind of cut that off. Plus the experience. Again, this is the marketing equation. So what is positioning? We're solving for P. We're solving for positioning. Positioning is real simple. We're going to classify this as just so I don't have to keep writing it out. ME. Positioning is the story. The story sells. The story is everything to your new startup venture. It is everything. Without a story, it's going to be very difficult for you to build your blue ocean enterprise. Let me give you an example. So years ago, there was a professor, I believe he was at Stanford, and he was a marketing teacher, and wanted to know how powerful, how important is the story to consumers? How important is it to sales? So what he did is he had about 20 students, I want to say, in his class, MBA Stanford students. And what he did is he created a fictional widget, fictional product, and he defined this product. We'll call it a vacuum cleaner, washer, dryer, blender, all in one. And on a sheet of paper, he wrote down the description of the product and then wrote down several negative attributes to this product. Things like maybe it wasn't as reliable, maybe it was trying to do too many things, maybe it used up a lot of electricity, whatever it was. On an entire page, he had the description and then a bunch of negative characteristics of this product. Then he brought in a salesman, a real salesman, not a car salesman that's trying to dupe you out of a few $100 at the parking lot. No, no, no. A salesman that is more of, that understands the psyche of people and is looking at a bigger picture. Somebody that's looking at a relationship even, in terms of understands how to build relationships with their consumers. And this individual walked into class. These are Stanford MBA students. Walked into class, presented his widget to all 20 students. How many of those students bought the product? How many of those students purchased the product? Say there's 20 of them. Artemis says 50%. Somebody else, don't be afraid to be wrong here. Artemis is not the only one to want to submit an answer. I know there's got to be others. How many, so the question is, how many of these students bought the product? Artemis says 50%. Phil, what do you say?
I'd say 75% if he was a good salesman.
75% if he was a good salesman. Dave says 100%. 100%. 20 out of 20 bought the product, yet right in front of them, they had in writing all of the negative characteristics of this widget. And they had a day to they had a day to study it. It wasn't like, 5 minutes. I mean, and even in 5 minutes, you can see what's wrong with the product. The story sells. That's how you get PR. That's how you get customers. I'm not talking about lying. I'm not talking about fibbing. I'm not talking about over-exaggerating. I'm talking about a real story. And you may say, well, that makes sense. Yeah, it does make sense. Now let's go to take a deep dive. The human psyche is such that we love stories. In our cultures, in the U.S., we've gotten away from stories. So if you can tell a story in the U.S., you're like a demigod. I mean, we've gotten away from these things. In a lot of other cultures, telling stories is how they hand each generation down their culture. It's how they hand down their traditions. And it's important. So storytelling comes second nature to a lot of other cultures. So you have an advantage. If you can practice and you can start remembering and learning how to tell stories, you've got one leg up on your competitors. Positioning with the human psyche is such that the story must be believable and credible. Again, no ridiculous exaggerations that aren't going to be believed. It must be believable and credible. Believable and credible. Well, okay, that makes sense. But in order for it to really resonate, in order for it to really, really resonate with your customers, it's going to have to be in the form of a myth, metaphor, and image. Now, I say this because international cultures really take to heart these kind of things, these kind of stories. They really take it to heart in a way that is such that if it hits home, you are going to be selling like crazy because you built trust. You built a lot of trust. All right, now, I wanted to go over position. We'll go over the segmentation, differentiation. Well, maybe we'll do it now. Maybe we'll do it right now while I've got you here, because we have a lot of stuff to cover. So you have P equals, now this is segmentation. Segmentation is your target market. It's, another word for your target market is demographics. Think of advertising, think of working with a culture in South Africa or market in South Africa. Maybe it's in Europe. Maybe, I mean, you've got to know who your target market is. You've got to know who your demographics are. Am I right? You have to know who you're selling to. You have to know. Demographics is classified as things like age, gender, income, etc., etc. Right? It's not enough to know your demographics. It's not enough to know who they are. It's not enough to know that Mrs. Lopez is of a certain age, certain income bracket, certain household demographic, or a certain household location, geographically, etc., etc. It's not enough to know who she is. What else do you need to know? You have to know what they want. Very close. Very close, Artemis. Very, very close. Tim, you have to know how they think. It's called the psychographics of the demographics. If you know how they think, now don't you think that you can build a story that is believable, credible, and maybe in the right myth or metaphor or image that they want? Now you get how this puzzle works together. You need to know the psychographics of the demographics. You need to know how they think. Now here we have differentiation. Differentiation are your competitive advantages. What are competitive advantages? What are competitive advantages? Competitive advantages could be price, but really competitive advantage, patents. Competitive advantages are what makes my product, service superior. What makes my product, service superior? I call these discriminators. Competitive advantages is such a, it's like saying out of the box. It's so beaten up. I mean, it's so used or ROI. So you have P equals S plus D plus the experience. You don't go to Starbucks for coffee. I've got news for you. You don't go to Starbucks because it is the best in town. You don't pay $5.43 for a coffee, mocha, latte, espresso, whatever, right? Every day. Why do you buy that from Starbucks? Why do you go to Starbucks? And when you go to Starbucks and you see people working on their computer, so here's another question. What's the computer that you see when they open it up? Yeah, what kind of laptops? It's a Mac. They're Macs and Apples, right? So the people with Macs and Apples, they go there so they can flip open their niche product and feel cool. Yeah, I got a Mac, of course. I'm working on the next generation of, gaming software, of course. Whatever it is that they want you to believe. I happen to have a Mac, and I go there and I open up my Mac and feel cool too. Every once in a while. But the reason why you go to Starbucks is because of the experience. It used to be that Starbucks didn't have hardly any. There were very few drive-thrus because they wanted you to come in. And now that all of these other companies are starting to make better and better coffee, they're having to open up more drive-thrus. But you go into a Starbucks because you feel that air of sophistication. That's the experience. And so the definition of experience, I'm just going to use right now Starbucks. That's going to be your definition. That's going to be your definition. When you go into a market internationally, in movie theaters, okay, so let me see movie theaters in terms of the experience. Well, yeah, I mean, think about it. You go to an AMC versus a Harkins, and they are constantly trying to put in the best sound system. They're constantly trying to give you the best possible experience that you can have. I'm not familiar with Cinemark, but the reality of it is, you go to the movies because of the experience, the big surround sound that you get. And I don't know what movie theater, maybe both the Harkins and the AMCs, you get that 1 30-second clip before the movie starts where all of the stereo systems or all the speakers are chiming at a certain time, and you're like, ooh, wow. Right? Right? That's right. Okay. I had to go over that with you guys, the red and the blue ocean, because when you go into a new market, you're going to be competing with red ocean companies. When you go into a new country and you're going into a new market, you're going to have to identify your target market. You're going to have to resonate with them. Your ad is going to have to resonate with them, which means that you're going to need to understand the psychographics of the demographics. You're going to need to be able to hit that emotional trigger. You're going to need to give them those competitive advantages and give them an experience all in one story. And that story needs to last about how long? That story, sometimes you have 15 seconds. Sometimes you have a minute and a half to tell that story. Believable, credible, resonating, gives the experience, and throws in at least 1 or 2 discriminators. Tell me that marketing, because we think of, especially very technically detailed, oriented individuals, engineers, etc., often look at marketers as those people who are making stuff up. There's no science to it. That's right. It's an art. It's beyond a science. Da Vinci was beyond science. Michelangelo, beyond science. Even Einstein, his genius was that his formulas were almost art in a way. I mean, it wasn't, sure, it's science, but it's to a point where it's art. When you get so good at something and you practice it for so long that your science becomes an art, then you've arrived. And the beauty about it, though, is you're always going to be pushing that envelope. You'll never fully arrive. You're always going to have to keep creating, keep building. All right, so you need to resonate with, you absolutely need to resonate with your target market. Now, a couple of things when doing business abroad. I had said before, and I'm going to correct myself, there were 27 countries in the EU, part of the European Union. And I had said before that there were 13 members of the EU that were on the euro, that currency, the euro. There are actually 17. They keep adding them on me. And I was just curious as to how many they had added in the last year, and it boom. Okay. Now, we'd also talked about NAFTA, and I wanted to add a couple of things here. The North American Free Trade Agreement. Who are the four? What's the question, Artemis? Kind of, who are the four? Who are the four what?
Countries that got added to the euro.
Oh, it's a good question. You know, I didn't look that up. I just know they keep adding them. Good question. That's your next homework assignment, Artemis. All right, so NAFTA, we talked about who created NAFTA. Who was the brainchild behind it of the three countries?
U.S.
The U.S., right? The U.S. Whoops. The result, there are three primary results that the U.S. was looking to get out of NAFTA. To create a new market. You know, U.S. companies drive business, they drive politics also. We talked about the flag follows the what? The flag follows the dollar. Excellent. I see you up there, Tim. The flag follows the dollar. They wanted to, the U.S. companies want to constantly expand their market. So part of NAFTA was being able to allow U.S. companies to expand into Mexico or Canada without ridiculous tariffs. This is a harsh statement, but true. Ownership of the Western Hemisphere. It gives us more of a stronghold with Mexico and with Canada. It also positions us as the hegemon in the Western Hemisphere, really with South America also. And it's multilateral, meaning that all parties agree. It wasn't something that the U.S. forced. So, and it made sense. So a lot of other countries in Latin America got a little warm, fuzzy feeling with the U.S., which was a positive, right? It wasn't a bilateral agreement where the U.S. was trying to shove one thing onto another country. Very important to recognize that NAFTA was created by the brainchild of the U.S. and received immediate buy-in from Canada and Mexico. Immediate buy-in. We talked about currencies. So I have a question for you all online. The dollar is kind of weak right now. That's the question. Give me the answer. Bill?
No?
No?
As compared to what?
Compared to what? Excellent, Phil. He said no compared to what? I got Tim, I got Steve, I got Randy. Exactly. Compared to what we were able to buy 3 years ago or compared to the euro? Now I'm going to take another deep dive here. We already went over compared to what? We are right now in this current financial or economic, we'll say, in the current financial markets, if you think about all the countries out there, we've got kind of a serious issue, kind of a serious problem. We got lots of problems, but I'm going to point one out in particular. It's called devaluation. It sounds like a bad word. Devalue? You're going to devalue my car? It's going down? You're going to devalue my house? Again? You know, it sounds like a bad word, right? Devaluation. Well, right now, you have a currency war going on where countries are battling to try to devalue their currency against other currencies. Why would say the euro? There are 17 countries in the euro. 17 countries utilizing the euro, the currency. Why would they want to devalue their currency against, say, the US dollar? What advantage is there? Entices foreign investment, easier to pay off debts. You know, and some of these may be somewhat correct, but the reality of it is this. Let's say I'm buying Michelin tires. Michelin is a French company. And let's say the euro, because France is on the euro, let's say the euro is trading, hypothetically, I'm going to give you a hard lesson in currencies real quick. Let's say the euro is trading at $1.40. This means that it takes $1.40 to buy 1 euro. Follow that? It takes $1.40 to buy 1 euro. If I'm going to go to Europe and exchange my money and I want to buy 1 euro, it's going to cost me $1.40. What happens if Michelin is selling tires and the euro costs $1.40 per euro? Let's say the tire costs $1,000. I'm sorry. Let's say the tire costs, it's a really crazy tire, right? Let's say the tire costs 1,000 euro. How many dollars is that? How many dollars is that? That's right. It's $1,400. Okay? Well, what if what if the financial minds in Europe said, hey, you know what? Our economy is not doing so hot. We're not doing well. We got the pigs. Portugal, Italy, Greece, Spain. We got the pigs that are dragging us down, and that's what they're affectionately called. Greece has defaulted numerous times on their debt. They're going through austerity measures right now. Spain is on the cusp. Italy is on the cusp. Portugal's on the cusp. What if the financial mind said, you know, we got to, our economy's not doing so well. What if our currency, the euro, were to devalue against the US dollar? Would that make us more competitive? I don't know. Well, let's take a look. Right now, it costs $1,000 or 1,000 euros to buy a Michelin tire, which is 1,400 US dollars. What if the euro goes down to $1.30? Well, now how much is that Michelin tire? It's $1,300. Now, what happens if a U.S. tire company, let's call it, let's say Mickey Thompson. Let's say Mickey Thompson's are priced right now, and this is up here. Let's say Mickey Thompson's, this is the Michelin. Let's say Mickey Thompson's are priced at, say, $13.50 a tire. And then all of a sudden, over 6 months, the euro starts to devalue against the US dollar. Well, they're still at $13.50, but now the Michelin's at $1,300. Which one would you be more likely to buy, given that the quality of both is such that they are almost indistinguishable? You would buy the Michelin, right? You see, this is how countries compete. And there is a race to try to devalue currencies. That's one of the biggest problems that we have with China, isn't it? That their currency, the renminbi, the RMB, or the yuan, the renminbi, the RMB, I'm not going to call it the renminbi anymore, because if you go to China and you say renminbi, they're going to laugh at it. The RMB is pegged against the dollar. It means that it's not going up in value. It's priced way down here. Which means that when Chinese products come into the U.S., they are dirt cheap, right? And it's hard for U.S. companies to compete with dirt cheap products, even if the quality is tremendously superior, right? Do you see how that works? We have a big problem right now in that our economy is actually picking up steam here in the U.S. compared to where we were in 2009, 2010, 2011, and 2012. 2013 is looking to be a pretty good year on a lot of different fronts. Unemployment is going down, et cetera, et cetera. You can make the argument. I'm not talking about politics. I'm talking about just in general. All right? We have a problem. A lot of countries are devaluing their currency against the dollar and against each other, hoping that that will fuel exports. Europe wants and needs, right? Actually, Europe needs the euro to come down to close to $1.15. Right now, the euro is trading at around $1. I want to say the euro right now is trading at around $1.29. Actually, I'll tell you right now. I'll tell you exactly what it's trading at. The euro is trading at 1.3051. So if you want to buy 1 euro, it's going to cost you $1.30, 30.5 cents. That's what it's going to cost you. I'm saying, as a student, a constant student of the flow of funds and the velocity of money, that the euro, in order for Europe to get back on track, they're going to have to spur their economy through exports, and the only way that's really going to happen is if the euro comes down to around $1.15 from $1.30. Maybe even $1 over the next 3 or 4 years. And it has been coming down. If you remember 2007, 2008, it was up at like $1.46, $1.52, $1.70. For you to buy 1 euro costs you $1.70. It's gotten considerably weaker over the last 5 or 6 years against the US dollar, I might add. Tim says that he lives in the US-Canadian border and the Canadian dollar was worth more, so Canadians were crossing the border and filling up Costco's and Walmart's on the US side. Is this an example of this? No question about it. No question about it. The loonie, or the Canadian dollar as it's formerly known as, is slightly stronger. Actually, I don't even know. It might be slightly stronger than the US dollar right now. But they're almost at parity. So, translation. I think it'll cost you around $1.02 to buy 1 Canadian dollar, 1 loonie. So you flip that around, and 1 loonie will give you more purchasing power if you go across the line than if you buy the same product in Canada. Do you see how that works? And Tim, you're absolutely right. That's a great example. How do you make that possible? Well, you're getting into interest rates, and you're getting into more finance and economics, which is my favorite pastime and hobby. I don't want to take too much of a dive, but if you want to, Art, you can ask me a little bit later. So the question, or offline. So the real question is, how does the euro drop down in cost? How does the euro drop down in cost? Well, it's really a function of interest rates and the velocity of money. And I don't have time. That's a whole semester. Actually, it's a few classes, but numerous deep dives would take a whole semester. But it's not that terribly difficult. It's really a function of interest rates. Their banks are issuing money. Yeah, that's part of it, Tim. That's part of it. You're talking about the central banks tightening, contracting, or expanding the money supply. Okay? Now, moving right along. Take my finance class. I taught that in my finance class this last semester, spring, and it's so much fun. It's so much fun. You guys know me already. I like to simplify business. I like to simplify my concepts. So it's a great class to take, if I don't say so myself. Now, let's talk about our U.S. debt a little bit, because this has global implications. It has global implications. And before we really get into our U.S. debt, we need to talk about FDI and portfolio money. What is FDI? What does FDI stand for? Foreign direct investment. And we've already gone over this, right? Yeah, actually I didn't think so. Foreign direct investment. So when countries and businesses within those countries look to expand their exports or look to expand their presence into another country, let's say I'm Intel and I want to open up a facility in Africa. I'm going to invest, and let's just say it's in Zambia. Let's just say it's in Zambia, an emerging market, a developing country. They don't have the infrastructure that I'm looking for, but I know that there's an emerging market there, and I know that there's a strong market specifically for my product. And I don't know what product that would be for Intel, but let's just, again, this is hypothetical. Well, they launch into Zambia by opening up a manufacturing facility. They go through the site selection process, figure out the exact area, work with the government. The next thing you know, bam, they got a manufacturing facility in a suburb of their main city. That's called foreign direct investment. When you got businesses in other countries that are investing into other countries, that's called foreign direct investment. We have a lot of companies, a lot of companies that are constantly pursuing new and emerging markets to sell their product. And it's usually the risky money. I mean, if you think about Intel, they're very calculated with what they're going to do and when they're going to do it. But they have the money, I don't want to say to lose. Nobody has money to lose. But they have the money that if they lost a couple $100 million, in Zambia, it's not like it's going to turn them upside down and the next, they're out of business. But so it's considered a little risky. And that is what comes first. Then comes the portfolio money. Portfolio money would then say, wow, okay, so Intel is launching into Zambia, and I'm a speculator, I'm an investor. Well, boy, that means that they're going to be hiring lots of people. I mean, I heard that they were going to hire 5,000 people out of this plant. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to buy a bunch of land all around Intel. That's portfolio money. And I'm going to build houses on it. That's portfolio money. Now, a lot of countries right now in this current economic climate are hurting. And they're moving their money to the U.S. They're moving their money to the U.S. and they're buying things like companies, stocks, bonds. They're investing in U.S. government treasuries, real estate, you name it. Because their economies at home aren't doing so well. And I hear a lot of rhetoric that this is bad. We've got a lot of foreign companies and a lot of foreign direct investment that owns a lot of U.S. soil. A lot of good old-fashioned American products. And it's not bad. It's good. We rely on that foreign direct investment, and we rely on that portfolio money. Imagine if you had income coming in, and it's just yourself. And then all of a sudden, you got married, and she or he worked. And now you got more income. Your resources now should be much greater than they were by yourself. It's the same thing. When you get foreign companies coming in, well, they're creating jobs. They're buying land. They bought the land that you sold, creating money, creating for you. And maybe there wasn't, maybe somebody else, maybe there wasn't a market for your land before they came in. I remember in 2007, I had a buddy of mine who sold a large chunk of, it's right there by Casa Grande, Eloy. It's owned by Kuwaitis. A huge chunk. They create a market. They create investment. Who benefited from that? An American, most likely. And they sold the land. And they probably went out and bought more land or did something else. It helps to have foreign direct investment. It helps to have portfolio money enter into your country. And we say, well, wait a minute, China owns $800 billion worth of U.S. debt. They own the U.S., and we've talked about this a little bit. They don't own the U.S. We owe them money, but they're utilizing the U.S. dollar to stabilize their RMB, their currency. It's like somebody backing up their currency with hard collateral or something more, something that people have confidence in. A lot of people think gold is that confidence. Well, I'll buy gold. That way if the U.S. economy goes kaput, well, I've got all this gold. Well, what are you going to do? Are you going to eat it? Are you going to shave it off in slivers and go to the grocery store with it? And Tim, you're absolutely right. That is hedging. So, that is absolutely hedging. So, let's say I'm a European. Let's say I'm in Italy. And I'm on, we use the euro in Italy. I might invest in the U.S. The economy's doing well. Look at what the stock market's been doing. What's the stock market? What are the markets been doing in Europe? Euronext. What have they been? How have they been doing? How about companies? It seems like the U.S. companies are getting stronger and stronger. You might hedge your bet and put a portion of your money in the U.S. It is a form of hedging against the downturn in your own local economy and yet also benefiting with your portfolio money into the U.S. So the U.S. debt, we've heard about how we printed so many dollars that we're going to go under here soon, and that our debt ceiling is so high that it's equal to that of Greece per person, and how we're going to, at some point our economy is just going to unravel. And maybe that's the case. I don't think so. I think our economy is strong. I think it's stronger than it was before. I think it's getting stronger. And I don't see inflation taking hold just yet. And we always go through cycles, boom and bust. Boom and bust, boom and bust. But the question is, well, we've got a lot of debt. And a lot of countries have invested in us. And you have a lot of politicians that want us to default on that debt. They don't care. They don't believe that we should have more debt. And maybe they're right. But the reality of it is the United States has never defaulted on any of their debt. And to default on their debt now, our debt would be fantastic. And I say fantastic in a way that it's ridiculous. The word fantastic, if you look it up in the definition, means some kind of dream, some kind of ridiculous. That would be one of the worst financial things. You and I, we would have to learn how to barter. I would have to become an instant farmer. Phil would have to learn how to raise chickens. I'd have to learn how to raise goats. I don't know about you, but the last time I was at a farm was about 28 years ago. So I don't know much about farming. What I want to say is foreign direct investment portfolio money help keep countries alive. Countries are fighting for foreign direct investment dollars. They're fighting for portfolio money. And the U.S. is fighting for it also. We want investment from other countries. That tells us we're the place to be. How many of you have heard that Canadians are driving up the real estate prices in Arizona? How many of you have heard that if you live in Arizona? And Tim, it would be bigger than a black swan. It would be a black condor. Yeah, that's a good one. How many of you? That's foreign direct investment. That's portfolio money coming in. There was a house just down the way. I was trying to buy a house in the summer, last summer. I must have lost 6 houses. 4 houses probably. There were a few that I didn't even bid on. Because every time I would bid on these houses, somebody would jump in with a higher price. I lost 4 houses, I think. I had to keep bidding up and up and up. I ended up buying a house almost sight unseen. It happened to be 6:30 in the morning on a Saturday, and all of a sudden I saw a house pop up. And I called my real estate agent that morning early, and I said, buy it. I said, well, wait a minute, don't buy it. But buy it. Wait a minute. Well, I got to buy it. I'll be there at 10. What time do you think they're going to open? We got there, and they were staging the house, putting furniture in. And I knew that there were Canadians and Europeans and Californians that were snapping up houses quickly. 10 a.m. I get to the house. I said, you can take this thing off the market. You don't have to stage this house with any more furniture anymore. I'm going to put the offer in. I'm going to buy it right now. And we did. And that was because of portfolio money. That was because of foreign direct investment. The United States right now is considered a flight to safety in terms of money. We are a flight to safety. And as Tim said earlier, we're a hedge. We're a hedge against other countries if you live in that country. And flight to safety is really often about preservation of what? Preservation of what? Of capital. Preservation of capital. And by the way, Californians are the largest investors in real estate in Arizona, and then Canada. Yes, preservation of capital, then. Preservation of capital. Now, currencies are important. FDI is important. Understanding why countries are wanting to devalue their currency against the US dollar is important. They know that we like to spend. They know that we like to spend money. And if we can get high quality at a lower price, we'll do it. We'll do it. We'll spend the money. We're not savers here in the U.S. We're spenders. Unlike the Japanese, who are serious savers. Saving has gone up in the U.S. considerably. Has gone up in the U.S. considerably. But we have a long way to go. We have a long way to go. Any questions or comments thus far? Any questions about debt, the U.S. debt? Any questions about why countries are putting their money into the U.S.? What foreign direct investment is? What preservation of capital really means? Why is it that we should be aware of this? And you know what's interesting, and this is what's beautiful. You shouldn't be looking at Canadians and saying, "Oh, they're buying up all our houses, they're dry, I can't even live here anymore." You shouldn't be looking at Europeans or Middle Easterners or Africans or Asians and saying, "Oh, they're buying this and they're buying that and things are getting." No, you know what? As the hegemon, U.S. citizens, U.S. businesses are investing abroad regularly. What do you have, knowing that we have global competition? Knowing that we have global competition, what do you have in your portfolio that is invested in a company or companies or interests abroad? What do you have abroad? If it's zero, you need to change it. We're the drivers of global commerce, and you don't have anything, any interest in anything abroad? Now, granted, I know you're students also, you're students. But don't you think that because we're the hegemon and because that's who we are, don't you think that we should consider it? I'm not saying you have to, but don't you think you should consider it? Maybe it's investing into equities in other countries. Can foreign citizens easily buy U.S. stocks? Yes, they're called ADRs. I think they stand for American Depository Receipts. So what you would do is, if let's say you lived in, again, we'll say Mauritius, and you want to buy Coca-Cola. You can buy Coca-Cola on the New York Stock Exchange. No problem. Boom. It's done immediately. You can absolutely buy. They can absolutely buy. And you know what? What if they didn't? What if they weren't? What if it wasn't easy? Do you think the stock market would be as high as it is? No. I think a lot of foreign money is driving the stock market. They would rather put it into the U.S. markets with global companies like Coca-Cola than maybe their own local company. And if you own a piece of that stock and you get more demand from international investors, what is that going to do to your stock, your equities? It's going to drive it up. Do you see the benefits to global commerce? MNCs do a lot of investing in the United States. MNCs in the U.S., we do a ton of investing abroad. Did I tell you that GM sells more cars in China than they do in the U.S.? I did, and I just found out maybe it was Monday or Tuesday, that I believe Ford is on track in the next couple of years to sell more cars and vehicles abroad than it is in the U.S. That's global thinking. That's where we need to be. American means to me global commerce. American means we are involved in global business, we're involved in global commerce, we're involved in global cultures, we are involved globally. If you put on those blinders and you say everything should be American made that we buy, you're not going to be able to afford it with the cost of labor. And yet we hear people all the time, oh, we need to bring back more manufacturing. Sure, again, qualify. What kind of manufacturing do we need to bring back? Somebody tell me what kind of manufacturing we need to bring back. High tech. Doesn't necessarily need to be cars. High tech is what we need to bring back. I'll tell you this right now, I don't want my children working in a car factory unless they're running. I don't want them spot welding. I don't want them putting ashtrays in the vehicle. Leave that to someone else. But we have to be open to global commerce. We have to understand the complexity of our economies. Again, it's the trifecta of the democratization of information, technology, and finance that we need to be experts in. Constantly need to be thinking about how we're going to expand our horizons abroad. So when I talk about global commerce, I'm talking about exposure. I'm talking about exposure. How much exposure do you have to international competition? Question number one. You have 100% exposure to international. I mean, international competition is everywhere. Everything that we see is made somewhere else. Look on the back of your towels. You'll see made in Macedonia, made in Turkey. You'll see certain widgets made in China. You'll see things made in Taiwan. You'll see things made in France, made in Italy. You'll see things made in the USA. So you have a lot of international exposure domestically. How much do you have yourself internationally? That's question number two. If you're only buying their products, Well, that's only half the equation. What about building your enterprise internationally? And we can. How much exposure do you have to international business here? A lot. How much exposure do you have, do they have to you and to your company? Build that division. Build that division. Did we talk about the 6 functions of a business? Yes?
I think it was last semester. R&D.
Let me go over the 6 functions of a business. This is very important. And very appropriate for today. So the first one is strategy. The second is operations. The third is marketing. Here you have finance. Here you have R&D. And here you have international business. These are the 6 functions of a business. The strategy we know sets the point. This is the war that we're in, and we're going to march to that point. Operations is part of the tactics. Operations is the heart and soul of your business. I don't know how to draw a soul, so I'm just going to say so. Heart and soul of your business. R&D is the innovation that drives your business. Finance are basically all the people that say what? Say no. Exactly, Tim. Marketing is what sells. International business is a function of your business that is often way too underutilized. It's not present enough. And I told you in, I think, the second session, the second class, that if you're going to build an international division, you need to dedicate a team, not spread everybody thin. And this will continue to build. Within a couple of years, I'm willing to bet that a third of your revenue will come from international sales, which means that your sales will increase. You're not just trying to harvest the customers here locally, you're trying to harvest cash from the customers abroad. And it's proven that companies, MNCs, or SMEs, small to medium-sized enterprises, that have sales abroad generate about a third more in revenue. Would you like an extra third of your revenue? If you're doing $100 million in revenue or $10,000 in revenue, would you like an extra $3,000 or $300 million to put it in scale? Yes. Yes, you would. This is global business, people. This is what I'm talking about. This is money. And we need to understand the flow of funds. And the flow of funds is all about FDI and portfolio money. I am a consummate student of the flow of funds globally. And I regularly debate with and argue, and many times I'm taking the devil's advocate position, where although I believe the opposite is true, I will advocate for something I believe is different, simply so that I can learn more. Maybe I'm missing something. I regularly argue and debate with individuals across the world, buddies of mine, men and women who are in markets in different countries. And we talk about what's going on in China. We talk about what's going on in India, in Mexico, in Zambia, in the Middle East. We talk about these things because the information is there. It's available. It's one of the legs, right? It's a democratization of information. I recommended that in this class in order to really glean a continual real-life, real-time perspective of what's going on globally. You might consider subscribing to the Financial Times. You'll actually love it. You'll become addicted to it. There's so many cool, global articles. It'll blow your mind. You'll read about fashion in Paris. You'll read around fashion in Japan. You'll read about businesses acquiring each other, mergers and acquisitions. You'll read about what's going on in a small town in Germany and how that's affecting a small town in Ohio. I mean, or a big town in California, whatever it may be. It's a beautiful, beautifully written publication. And it keeps us up to speed. Just like that China article. Yeah, that's right, Artemis. Just like that China article. Any questions or comments? Any questions or comments? We need to know what's happening now. That's where the Financial Times comes in. And that's where this class comes. That's where talking to people from other countries comes in. So, we will have class tomorrow, 8 a.m. Same channel, connect.asu.edu/Senor Chavez. 8 a.m. tomorrow, Friday. I look forward to seeing you. Are there any other questions or comments? No. Fantastic. See you then. Thank you, Ben, Bob, Chris, Dave, Randy, Tim. Quiz answers. Okay, Ben, I'll work on that. Tim, what were you going to say? Are you offering that finance class this fall? I don't know. I think I may. I'm not sure. I hope so. I forgot. I will ask. I hope that